Thank you for having a look at the video presentation of the pictorial Gut Tracking as Cultivation. My name is Lawrence Boer, and this work is done together with my colleagues from the IXD lab at the IT University of Copenhagen. Two contemporary developments triggered the project presented in this pictorial. The first is medical research on the gut-brain axis. The gut-brain axis refers to the biochemical signals that are sent between the gastrointestinal tract and the central nervous system. The composition and diversity of the gut microbiome is said to link to moods and emotions, and vice versa, that moods and emotions influence the gut microbiome. The relationship between the gut and the brain is contested, especially as studies have so far mainly been done with rodents. Only one large study with humans exists. The second development that triggered this project comes from our interest in self-tracking devices. We believe that the existing approaches to self-tracking assume that the medical phenomenon under study can be accurately measured and reflected upon, and that this reflection can lead to knowledge, action, and therefore self-improvement. Despite that the knowledge on the gut-brain axis is contested, we see that the knowledge about it is slowly being taken up by developers. For example, Food Marble comes with a breathalyzer to track fermentation levels, akin to the breath test performed in clinical settings to diagnose common gastroenterological conditions, and combines this with sleep quality and stress levels. Such applications thus subscribe to accurate measurement and effectiveness. We believe that alternative perspectives are necessary in this emerging science and development domain, especially as later applications will be rooted in early commitments and choices. To understand the medical science at play has led us to use design research approaches that are open-ended and exploratory. This led us to design a self-tracking probe. The probe follows the logics of a hydrogen breath test that is used to assess the composition of gut bacteria. The breathalyzer then promises to be related to mental states such as depression or stress. It intends to evoke qualitative reflections by deliberately reducing the complexity of the gut-brain axis to a number between 0 and 250. This number is shown on the small display after breathing into the orange sensor. The dissonance that this presentation creates was intended to open a space for reflection, letting the participants articulate issues they come across regarding self-tracking the gut-brain connection in their everyday life. We deployed the probe for 2 weeks with 5 members of a research group from a medical museum. These researchers designed and curated an exhibition on the topic. They were knowledgeable about the research that has been taking place in this domain and skilled in how science about it is communicated. We hoped that they would use their expertise about the topic and combine it with their personal experiences of the probe. After the deployment, we discussed their reflections and speculated what kinds of devices could be in its place. In the pictorial, we specifically focus on the experiences of a researcher in psychology and well-being. She connected her experiences to her research on patients who suffer from IBS. She said that people with poor gut health tend to conceptualize their gut microbiome as other. That is, the gut has its own behavior and desires that expresses itself in flare-ups and periods of remission. In the design session that followed, we were inspired by her ideas. She posed that an externalization of the gut microbiome would be less confrontational than a real-time measurement. The notions of externalization and cultivation as a form of self-tracking could support psychological and social well-being for people with poor gut health. This led to the following design brief. Design a way to externalize, experience, and reflect on the self through cultivation of the gut microbiome. Such design is meant to consider overcoming stigmatization of ill and unstable bodies, in particular issues of gut health that are often considered cultural taboos. For the project, we took the interpretive leap that breathing, but also taking a saliva swab, provides access to gut microbiomes. To cultivate the gut microbiome, we found inspiration in the nutrient Agar. This is a general-purpose medium that supports the growth of a wide range of organisms. We explored it as a medium to culture the gut microbiota from our breath or saliva. We could identify that fungus and bacteria colonies were growing on the Agar. However, opposed to diagnosing, we found that the structures and visual complexity of the microorganisms were intriguing. To explore this further, we created natural coloring from carrots, blackberries, and spinach. 3 members of the design research team each prepared 2 agar plates. The first one was breathed on for 10 seconds, while a second one was inoculated by a cheek-swabbed cotton bud. Each was watched for 7 days. The experiment allowed us to reflect on the experiential qualities growing the gut microbiome outside the body. We preferred the saliva swab over breathing on the agar plate, as it was a more careful and intentional interaction. Further, the slow timeline of culturing process led to daily curiosity and appreciation of the process. Lastly, we found that the emergence of complex pictorial structures was intriguing. This exploration led us to see design potential for gut tracking as a kind of cultivation. It would nurture a relationship between the self and the externalized microbiome that can become one of tending to the self in the other. We thus articulated the design concept as follows. Design a viewer that stages the complex structures of cultured gut biota for close examination and aesthetic appreciation. This picture of one of our experiments shows that the structural complexity of the biota can be strengthened by viewing the petri dishes against sunlight or backlight. We took this as a starting point and we designed and developed a device that can be clicked onto a petri dish and that contains a magnifying lens that affords studying the cultured gut biota up close. We refer to the pictorial for details on the design process. We called the device Loupe. Loupe is a viewer that allows to closely examine and aesthetically appreciate the complex structures of cultured gut biota. The transparency of the bottom of the device allows viewing the bacteria in backlight, or alternatively, sunlight. The petri dish is clicked into a ring that can be rotated to look closely not just from above, but from various angles, to see details of the structural complexities of the cultured forms. Loupe is designed to be worn around the neck and placed over the gut area. Presenting the gut biota almost as a piece of jewelry was intended to challenge stigmatization of issues around the gut. Loupe required dedicated venue as a space to tend to petri dishes over time. We choose a box as an object to stage the culturing of the gut biota. A professional cabinet maker was commissioned to support the making of a home base for Loupe. We called this box Lightbox. By paying attention to the details and craft of the box itself, we wanted to elevate the importance of the cultured microbiome as something beautiful and precious, as well as something to be respected and handled with care. The Lightbox has a soft backlight to it to create contrast in the appearance of the agar-grown bacteria. It also contains a dedicated place for Loupe and the cotton buds. Together, Loupe and Lightbox act as a viewer that stages the complex structures of cultured gut biota for close examination and aesthetic appreciation. We see Loupe as a vantage for reflection. Loupe is worn as a necklace, displaying the cultivated state of the gut. As we learned during our probe studies, conditions related to the gut health are a risk for stigmatization, because it is invisible and because the nature of the symptoms are focused around the bowel and rectum. In designing for a culture where gut health is no longer a taboo, we challenge the status quo and propose and speculate on alternative cultures of wellness. To close, we see Loupe and Lightbox as an example of a slow technology that invites for a more complex and emergent understanding of the gut. Instead of presenting data about the material, we present the material itself. This might seem like a strange idea. Sampling, culturing, and keeping specimens over time is not a normal or natural thing to do. However, this might offer something that's missing from current self-tracking technologies, creating a familiarity with the materials that produce the sensation of wellness or illness directly. Thank you.